Welcome to Covered, the CTV and Rebuild Christchurch show that takes a behind-the-scenes look at the residential rebuild program in Canterbury. Today we'll be talking with Peter Sparrow of the Christchurch City Council about their building consent process. We'll also be talking to William Huell from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment about their technical guidance for rebuilding or repairing properties in earthquake-affected areas right here in Canterbury. We'll also be talking to insurance advocate Darren Wright, who is going to give us some top tips for customers who are still dealing with their insurance claims. With me now is Peter Sparrow, the Director of Building Control and City Rebuild for the Christchurch City Council. Welcome, Peter. Thanks for coming on in.
Thank you.
Now, you were appointed to the role at the start of last year, and it's a massive task, really. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is that you actually do and why we have a consenting process?
Right, so I'm the Director of Building Control City Rebuild with Christchurch City Council. Now that's a new position from last year. Building control in New Zealand is governed by the 2004 Building Act. Now all councils provide those services, but because of the issues that we saw in 2013,
Yep.
Crown Management had to come in and basically take control of the building control services of Christchurch City Council. So it's been a very interesting, probably 18 to 19 months.
Okay, so this has been issues that some people are aware of and some people aren't. Can you just sort of briefly tell me exactly, what happened to get us to the point that we're at now?
Right, okay, so in 2013 Christchurch City Council lost their accreditation, which is the requirement that they have to be able to issue building consents. Now because of that, central government had an agreement with Christchurch City Council to put in place a Crown Manager.
Right.
Now Doug Martin is the Crown Manager and he put forward an action plan to government to fix the building control processes with Christchurch City Council. Okay,
so now we're at today where we're almost back to square one really and working our way through the process. What does a person do if they need consents and things like that? Can you just step me through the actual process for a client?
Okay, so first of all what has to happen is they have to obviously have the desire to either do a repair or a rebuild. They have to get plans and specifications developed and then they have to make an application for a building consent. Now we'll check those plans and specifications and then once we issue a building consent we'll do inspections and then provide that building work a co-compliance certificate at the end of the job.
So what happens when it's linked inextricably with your insurance company and they're managing the build? Who looks after that consenting process? Where are those responsibilities?
So the consenting process sits with Christchurch City Council. So we'll provide our regulatory requirements through the consenting process. We work with project management officers of insurers so we can understand what the demand is coming forward. So we'll meet with all PMOs on probably about a weekly basis and so we can understand what their priorities are as well.
Okay. So can you tell me, if you're with an insurer, it's up to the insurer to start this consenting process with the council, or is it up to me personally?
Well, under the Building Act 2004, it's the owner's responsibility. However, depending on your contract with your insurer, there's a decision there about who takes that responsibility on.
Right, okay, so that can then be a little bit tricky. So as the client, as the building owner, I would want to be asking those questions of my insurer. Have you sorted consenting process?
Oh, definitely.
Who's responsible for that? Okay, that's something that's quite important to remember. Of course, it gets more complicated if someone has cash settled. What's the advice out there for people? Do you leave it to your builder? Yeah.
Cash settlement, it provides a little bit of a tricky situation for us because we rely on PMOs to give us workload so we can forecast for our resources.
So now when you say PMOs, you're talking project
management officers for insurers.
Right.
However, that doesn't mean to say that a person who cash settles can't get a consent. Of course they can. And our advice to those people that have cash settled, shop around for your designers, get good quality professionals involved in the process. Okay. They'll help you through the consenting process as well.
So you're talking through your builders, your architectural draftsmen, your
That's right.
engineers, etc., and making sure that those processes are still filled.
Yes,
Because if you don't have that code of compliance, you've got major issues, haven't you?
that's right.
Yeah, you need to have a code of compliance for insurance,
Yes.
and you need to have a code of compliance if you're selling a property as well, don't you?
You need a code compliance if you are on selling a property.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, yeah. And the key one, I think, for a lot of people is that, yeah, you need to be covered by insurance.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So don't move back into your property until you've got that code of compliance.
Usually that will be covered by contract insurance as well
Oh,
during
okay.
the build.
Okay, building contract insurance too.
Yes.
Okay, so this is actually quite a big issue here, isn't it? Where do you find the biggest problems from a client's point of view? What is it that you would like to ease for them to make process easier?
I think the biggest advice that we can provide is, I'll reiterate what I said before, was get good quality professionals involved in the design and construction process. We find it very tricky sometimes around geotechnical engineers and structural engineers not actually talking to each other sometimes as well. So good quality professionals.
Okay. Now the technical guidance sometimes that the ministry offers and what you require are different. You know, is everybody starting to speak the same language again, or yeah,
Right.
are there issues there?
So the technical guidance provided by the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment was to kind of standardise some of the repair processes. Now that was in response to a limited resource of engineering, structural engineering in the country. So it was to standardise it. Now we've accepted the MB guidance from a Christchurch City Council perspective as well, where if an applicant was to provide that as a solution, we would accept it. Now applicants and their designers can also apply for a solution that is outside the scope of that guidance as well.
What kinds of things are exempt from getting consent?
Right, okay, so the Building Act 2004 has a schedule attached to it.
Right.
That's Schedule 1 of the Building Act. That is building work that doesn't require a building consent. Now it ranges from some really simple repair work to being able to replace windows, being able to replace claddings,
Okay.
as an example. Now there's also an aspect to that Schedule 1 where we can actually make a decision from a council perspective. So if an applicant can provide appropriate plans and specifications and a good quality assurance system through the build, we can actually exempt more than what's in Schedule 1.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that, and I think there'd probably be quite a few people who didn't realise that.
That's right.
So there is room for a little bit of lobbying and negotiation
Yes,
if
there is.
required. Okay, and that's to talk about with your consenting officer, I assume.
That's probably to talk about with Christchurch City Council itself.
Yeah.
I have a particular unit that's, that just deals with exemptions.
Okay. Finally, what kind of delays are going on at the moment with consents? Are people still having to wait for consents?
We've improved significantly. If we can go back to July 2013, I think we were around 40% compliance with our statutory timeframes of 20 days.
Right.
Now we're hovering around the 91 to 94%.
Oh, that's much more encouraging.
Yeah, so all of that work is not necessary. We haven't thrown resource at it or people. We've actually looked at our systems and streamlined our systems.
Great. Well, here's looking to more streamlining as the year continues.
That's right.
Peter, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
No problems.
When we come back, William Huell from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment will tell us about their technical guidance for rebuilding and repairing properties in earthquake-affected areas right here in Canterbury.
EQC gave me a nice payout, but what do I do now?
The insurance company finally settled on the agreed amount, but where do I start?
There's so much to organise. Who do I call first?
I don't have the time to be running around after contractors and doing paperwork.
Irrigation is the future for farming in New Zealand, but like any technology, you can't be expected to get the most out of it on your own. Hydro Services is the key to maximising your results. On-farm irrigation management, minimising drainage losses, minimising power usage and maximising efficiency. Soil moisture solutions, soil water holding capacity assessments, resource consent applications and on-farm workshops, all there in the one place. Hydro Services, your one-stop for irrigation management and soil moisture measurement solutions.
in your life. Colour Steel, the roof of New Zealand.
Hi, I'm Chris Lynch. Join me every Monday at 8:30 on CTV as we discuss the issues affecting you, your family and everything to do with Canterbury. That's CTV 8:30 right here.
I'm joined now by William Hewell from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. Welcome, William. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Can we start, please, by just what is MB? What is the ministry that you work for? It's a lovely wee acronym there, and everybody refers to you as MB. What does it mean?
Well, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment is a very large organisation, and so the part that's been involved in the Canterbury rebuild process is just a subset of the total group.
It's a big umbrella, isn't it?
Yes, there's over 3,000 employees in
Goodness,
MB.
okay. Now, MB is actually one of those government departments that doesn't get as much coverage as some of the others. So, which part of it is involved with Rebuild Christchurch?
All right, well, there's a group called the Canterbury Recovery Group, which is a small group of people who've been working in the technical areas around foundations and design and consenting.
Right.
There are also people working in the area of property relocation for people who are moving out of houses for temporary accommodation, and a number of other branches.
As well, okay. So you've got a lot of people that are actually on the ground helping those of us in Canterbury.
Yes, that's correct. There are a couple of offices in Christchurch.
Okay. Now, you must also be working very closely with council as well.
Yes, we're working, because we're working with the interpretation of the building code, it's right in the centre of the building consent process. We're working with councils with the solutions that we're putting out, so that when engineers put their designs into the system, they are already recognised, and it speeds the process up.
So perhaps, is that why, for the likes of myself, I haven't had much to deal with MB, because it's actually, you're kind of stuck in the middle of it, aren't you? So you're dealing mainly with insurers, engineers, builders, designers. At that point, is that how I understand it?
That's absolutely correct.
Great, okay, good. That's good to know. So now, MB puts out technical guides about how buildings are to be repaired or rebuilt. What kind of information in there is important for us, the client?
Well, I think what the MB guidance, technical guidance, does is it condenses together a whole lot of information that's been put together by a large number of very qualified engineering people from around the country after consultation. And so it's a body of knowledge that can be used for defining good solutions for people with building problems as a result of the earthquakes.
And are these guidance, all this information and all this work that's been done to prepare these guides, are they legal requirements? Is it a compliance issue, or are they suggestions? At what point does it become, actually, this is what you have to do?
The guidance itself is one solution which meets all the legal requirements for a building consent. And if you follow that guidance, you can get to the consent process very quickly and efficiently. It's not the only solution that could be used to get to the consent process, but it's one that we strongly recommend.
Okay, so you can use it as a really good starting point and strongly recommended follow, but then the final decision lies with the council still, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, so if you do have issues, you still need to take it up with your council in the first place?
Yes.
Right, yeah, okay. Just, it's important to get these all the ducks lined up, I suppose, and that's where
Yes.
a lot of people struggle trying to find out, okay, well, if I've got a problem here, where do I go to? So the engineers and the designers are using your information. What kind of work are you, how much time are you spending with, those professionals out there trying to get the information out there?
Well, over the 4 years now, we've been working every month with engineers around the country, making sure that the guidance is up to date.
Right.
We update it regularly.
Everything seems to be changing so fast.
It's changing.
Okay.
New problems arise. We're providing a solution for those new problems to help guide the engineering people to the correct solutions.
What about the engineers who are coming up with new solutions as well? Is it part of your ministry, is it part of MB to assess whether or not, I'm thinking particularly of like riprap and those kinds of things, these new technologies. Do you assess those? Who does that to see whether or not these are viable solutions for Canterbury?
What generally happens is that those documents are submitted to council in a consenting process, and they will review them as to whether they meet the building code. If there is something that arises that seems a little bit tricky, they may come back as a place of last resort to review and determine whether it's an appropriate solution.
Okay. There seems to be an awful lot of toing and froing. The communication lines must actually have to be kept quite open.
Very much so. We're talking to the council on a very regular basis. In fact, this week we've even been running training with the building consent people.
Okay. Can you give me just a quick idea, what kinds of things are covered by the guidance?
Well, the guidance initially sets out the TC1, TC2, TC3 process.
Right.
It sets out decisions and the way that those decisions were built up. So you can see the logic behind why we would get to a point where we say liquefaction is a problem, why we would say strain is a problem. So it covers regulatory issues as well. So the whole guidance sets up the department or the government view of how the building code should be interpreted.
Okay. It also sounds like you're almost creating a language so that everybody is on the same page, so that, you know, if you're defining all these issues of liquefaction, strain, lateral spread, all those kinds of things, it's like these are the issues and this is how it's defined. Has that kind of commonality helped, do you think, across the industry, so that now engineers can be talking the same language with councils with you?
We think it's had a tremendous benefit for the engineering community, because if you think of the engineers who were available when the earthquake struck and the 70,000 properties that needed attention, there was no way they were going to get round them all. So the guidance provided some level of observation that made sure each individual site got the level of attention it needed. The harder ones got the more geotechnical content, and the easier ones got perhaps a slightly easier ride. So focusing in the right place was a very important part of the guidance.
And everyone's talking the same language as well.
And everybody is talking the same language.
Just finally, I just want to touch on, if you're concerned about your engineer's report or the proposal or whatever, how much can MB help with, you know, am I doing the right thing? Am I getting a quality product? Am I getting the right solution for my property? Does MB have a role there?
MB has a number of avenues that you can get a hold of them. If you've got a problem in a particular technical problem, you can come through to the MB helpline. That will get you an answer on that front. But in the normal course of business, we'd expect homeowners to be talking to their engineer that they've got directly on the job, because lots of jobs are particular in the way they're addressed. So they need that individual attention, which we can't possibly give from a long way off.
Right. However, those engineers still have an obligation to meet the MB guidance and your council consent process as well, don't they?
Yes, they have an obligation to meet the consenting process. They can use the guidance as the tool to get there.
Thank you, William. I really appreciate your time.
No, thank you.
When we come back, insurance advocate Darren Wright gives us some tips on dealing with your insurance claim.
Don't get caught out. With the Super Mini Booster, the power is in your hands. As the smallest power pack in its class, the Super Mini Booster will get you back on track in no time. Trusted by leading professionals, the Super Mini Booster has all the power you need. Super Mini Booster, the power is in your hands.
Love music? Love summer? Then Ingham Lazy Sundays in the beautiful Botanic Gardens Archery Lawn is just the thing to get you enjoying the outdoors this summer. Every Sunday through January and February, and it's all free. So take time to recharge with family and friends, relaxing and listening to some great music from top musicians. View the lineup at summertimes.co.nz today. Ingham Lazy Sundays, putting summer into your Sundays.
Canterbury Live, coming to you live each day, Monday to Friday at 10 o'clock. We bring lifestyle choices to you. We're going out and about and bringing all that's wonderful here in Canterbury. Canterbury Live, 10 o'clock, Monday to Friday.
I'm joined now by Darren Wright, who is not only an insurance advocate, but is also the chair of the Minister's Canterbury Earthquake Recovery's Community Forum, and he's also on the board of the Residential Advisory Service. Welcome, Darren.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for coming on in. Now, as an insurance advocate for many people, what kind of success have you had in actually helping people with their claims? How's it gone?
Well, I've settled sort of around that sort of $50 million worth of claims for people, ranging from sort of small to large residential properties through to large commercial entities as well. So
you advocate for businesses as well as
yes,
private?
I've done a fair bit of commercial settlements as well, and actually getting those commercial buildings over the line. They're a lot easier because they're a lot less emotional and a lot easier to deal with. So.
Right.
Yeah.
It does become more complicated when you've got all those emotions involved. How important is it to have an advocate, do you think?
Well, I think it's important for people who have got to a point whereby they're just stuck and maybe they can't move forward. But there's a range of services out there now. When I first started, there really wasn't much for people, so there was quite a big space to step into. But that has changed significantly, and we're now seeing a lot of other services like the Residential Advisory Service, the CS, and sort of CanCern stepping into that space as well. So there are a lot more services out there to help people now.
Are you also involved with perhaps sending people off into these other directions if they're going to be better suited, working with the Residential Advisory Service? Or?
Yeah, for sure. To be quite honest now, most of my stuff is I advise people to go that way first of all, unless I think they've got something that's very specific and can be dealt with quite easily. I actually advise people to go to the Residential Advisory Service. For one thing, it's free, and I'm not. It's an independent service. It's got access to the legal advice they're going to need, which they don't have to pay for. And now it's got the technical panel up and running as well, so it's getting some technical advice. So it's really getting people along through that process. And every now and then I might get one pop out that needs a bit of extra work, or they just need to take it a bit further.
How long have you been involved with the board for the Residential Advisory Service?
I've been on the board of RAS since it started, right back from its conception, when the Minister started to bring it together, and it is funded by the Insurance Council, and ICNZ and EQC and SERA. So some people struggle with that, and that's why those people, I might advise them to go to CS, which is that very community-based advisory service.
And it's a bit more independent.
Well, I would, RAS is definitely very independent, because that's actually part of my role, to sit there and make sure that, sort of as a community representative, that independence is maintained. And that's something I'm quite passionate about and quite strong about, and very confident in, that the RAS is very independent and has maintained its independence all the way through. But
it actually wouldn't work if it's not, I would
No, clearly
think.
wouldn't.
Yeah, okay.
To have any input sort of down into the operationals by sort of the people who have funded it would cause problems. And to be honest, they don't want that either.
Right,
They
they've got enough
very
things
much,
to worry about.
Yeah, and they very much understand that it's an issue for people independence, and that they need to keep that independence in there so that their people can move forward. So, yeah, I very much push people through there now. And really operating quite more in the commercial space.
So, so with your work personally, how on earth are you managing to fit all this into your day personally? Because this sounds actually like quite a lot of workload. How do you keep the balance going?
Well, I think we're all struggling with that sort of work-life balance at the moment, aren't we? Well, basically, to be honest, for me, as the RAS and the CS and these other services have grown up, I've dropped back and not doing quite as much of the advocacy work as what I was, because I think that service is there for them.
So when you have a customer who knocks on your door, picks up the phone, says, help, what are the first things that you do? Do you sit down and talk with them? Do you have a quick chat over the phone?
No, generally I'll have a quick chat over the phone, and that may then result in me just giving them the RAS number and saying to them, I think you can get some help through these people, they can help you out. Sending them to that. If it's more complex than that, or if it's, for example, a commercial one, then I would go in and sit down with them and work through it. I sort of call it my cup of coffee.
Yep.
And to be honest, 9 out of 10 finish at that. I can give them enough there just for them to go off and do what they need to do, and maybe 1 out of 10 results in me actually having to get involved and sort of help them work through. And generally that's around people who simply don't have the time
Right.
or they have got some complexities going on for them that means they just can't deal with the situation and they really just need somebody to come in and deal with it for them.
So for people who want to approach you, what would be, say some top tips that you could give to them to say, right, think about this before you take this next step?
So the three things for me, and it's an evolving thing as time's gone on, but right now it's about actually get some advice. If you're not settled yet, then you've waited a long time, so there's a whole lot of stress issues involved in that, or you've got a very complex case. So it's about get some advice.
What sort of advice are you talking?
Well,
are you
again,
talking legal advice?
No, I would advise people to go to the Residential Advisory Service or to CS. You can go into either of those, even if you're just confused about the process, even if you're just not sure where to go to next. You don't have to have a legal problem. So they're very good at helping people step through those processes, bringing in the entities that are needed to come in. So the first thing to me is get some advice. And I guess if you're not satisfied once you've gone through those free services, then it's about trying to engage someone who, you might have to pay for, but is a bit more focused on yourself. And I guess just remind people now that there is funding available for that. The Red Cross grant is available, so people should really make use of that. That's still sitting out there.
Well, that's a good tip.
Yep,
yes.
So people can go and they can apply for the Red Cross grant, and that should be enough for them to get that first bit of legal advice from their own lawyer or from their own engineer or from some other specialist they think they might need. So it's about getting that advice. I think the next step for me is really getting people to understand it's actually about being pragmatic. It's about just trying to move your claim forward.
Okay.
And I give people a lot of advice around, look, you need to look at what's good for you, where you are at the moment, and then what's available to you in trying to settle your claim. Okay. And it's not one size fits all. I know certainly some advocates will go out there and say, no, you've got $1 million foundation here, we need to go to court and we're going to go through the courts and we're going to get you all this money. That's one approach. My approach is far more, look, we need to move towards a settlement that's fair for you and fair for the insurer and allows you to move on with your life. I put quite a bit of effort into really focusing on the individual moving on with their life and actually coming to a solution that allows them to do that.
Yeah, we're starting to talk quite long times now. So
yes, there's some very stressed people out there, and there's some people who believe they have very complex problems, but when you actually boil them down, they're not really that complex. And in a lot of cases, it's just a matter of the insurer understanding their position or them just understanding what their policy actually means.
Right.
And I guess not listening to what they think their neighbour got or what they think their sister's friend got, and actually just focusing on their policy.
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
Darren, thank you very much for joining me.
Okay, thank you.
So now, if you want free and independent advice about your insurance claim, contact the Residential Advisory Service. We often call it RAS as well. Really good place to start. There's also community law or the Canterbury Insurance Assistance Service. So if you or someone that you know needs support, social services or help with temporary accommodation, contact the Canterbury Support Line or the Canterbury Earthquake Temporary Accommodation Service. Join us next week when we'll talk to IAG and community law about cash settlements. Insurer FMG gives us some insight into their repair and rebuild program, and Dion Swiggs talks to us about the online resource that is Rebuild Christchurch.